Today we got 2 RFs front row forward. We are going to go through the 2 RFs first. I think they're a little bit more prominent, a little bit more important, a lot more interesting. Front row forward's a bit of a fucking basket case, but we'll get to that soon. But 2 RFs, mate. A few cheapies floating around here. We're not quite sure how it's all going to land, with the Melbourne Storm back row and Parramatta's back row. So a lot of question marks. I think that probably these 2 positions, potentially more so than any other trials, are going to be super important.
That's it, mate. Just finding out the roles of people, and we'll touch obviously on front row forward after, but just minutes of front rowers is so, so important. And the other thing with front rowers around their minutes, what the round 1 benches look like, what the rotations are going to look like. Is there a utility on there? Sides that name a 4-forward bench for round 1 almost puts a line through certain players as well. So big watch there. And second row forward, it's a fun position. It's great because there's so much upside to certain players. There's a lot of top dollar players that you're like, oh, surely they've got to regress in price after big years, but we've seen time and time again that doesn't always happen. So I can't wait to get stuck into this.
And I think with 2RF, mate, there's a couple of guys that I think are must-have guys automatic that are reflected in the ownership percentage. But then there's underneath that, there's a lot of punts that you can take here. And I don't think there's any obvious standout. So there's a lot to dive into here. I guess, mate, we'll start with the guns here for 2RFs. Now, how many guns do you think you'll be starting with? 1, 2, forward 3, or do you think that 1 or 2 is sort of the magic spot?
As it stands, I've got 1. If Luke Garner doesn't get sort of the big role that we anticipate, like let's say, I think Garner will. We've already spoken a bit about him. If he were to get named on the bench round 1 and say Hosking or Sorensen, I don't think it'll happen. But if they were to get that role, that would be a bit of a spanner in the works because then you're sort of starting to look a little bit slim there. I currently have 1 gun locked in. There's a few that I really like, but I'm spending up around my spine at this stage, not in my back row. But there's a really good case that, while it might not be the high ceiling position of halves and fullback and that sort of thing, you can get some consistent big scores as well. It's a tough one. But at the moment, 1 gun in my back row.
And when we are talking about, some of them do have a bit of upside. One of them definitely has. Fifita. Is he the one that you've got in your team?
He's the one that I've got plugged in at the moment. Yeah. And even there, you say gun, it's like, oh, who bloody knows what he's going to come out with. So.
Yeah, but, mate, in saying that, frustrating as all fuck last year. 66 average, the same as Angus Crichton. So, pretty wild. Now, Fifita, 689K, which is a lot of coin, but for him, I'm not sure if it is a lot of coin. If you get him at, even if you don't get him at his best, if you get him at 70%, there's a bit of value there. Obviously, the side has changed a lot of changes. I was hoping he would get Foz. He's got Tanner Boyd, which I don't hate. He's got a history with him. I think that my next dot point just summarises Fifita. Can't do worse.
Yeah, exactly. I think worst case scenario is a 55 average, in which case he loses a little bit of money. It's like, and you can cop that.
I think a lot would have to go wrong for him to drop to 55 though.
Yeah, so 65 average priced on 85 the year before. We've touched on a few times, of course, in our teams and whatnot. Contract year for David Fifita. I love that for him because he's going to come out and play. Like, I remember before he signed his last contract, there was talks of what is this bloke worth? Like, how much do you pay for Dave Fifita? Because he could be one of the rare forwards that you pay $1 million plus for. That was the chat at the time.
Yeah.
And you see now in the last 2 years, not a chance you'd pay that. If he comes out the first 10 rounds and demolishes opposition, the same conversations will be had. You know it. And he knows that. He's not stupid. Yeah. So I just think he's going to come out so fired up, looking to make a statement, as anyone would in a contract year. So, yeah.
And not only is it a big year for him, but Tanner Boyd's been given an opportunity here. I just can't imagine Tanner Boyd sitting back and letting Fifita float around and not fucking, like, he's got to get him into gear.
Yeah.
He's got to use, he's just, all Tanner Boyd has to do is show that he can use Fifita, utilise him, which I know sounds easy. It's easier said than done based off what we've seen in the last few years. But I think Fifita,
get the best out of Dave Fifita, and you can stay in this team for as long as you want. Don't care if you kick shit, tackle shit. Just get the best out of Dave.
Just get the best out of him. Yeah. So I like Fifita. I'll be starting with him. I think I'm just too scared to start without him.
That's it, mate. We rabble on about upside players. He's got the best upside of any back rower and forward by a big margin.
A distance. Yeah. Angus Crichton, 66 average, the same. He's a touch more expensive. He's about 8K more expensive than Fifita. He's got the buy-in round 4. We spoke about it with CTWs. He's obviously got Suoliti on his edge there. Are we assuming that edge sees more ball?
I think so. And I touched in yesterday's podcast on Daniel Tupou and the benefit he had with Luke Keary moving to the left edge. Well, Angus Crichton is far more significant. So as you said, 66 average last season. He averaged 85 points per game when Keary made that move to the left edge, which is substantial.
85.
Yeah. So he's a guy that I don't think I'll be starting with him primarily for the reason that, as you said, they've got that bye, and it's a great thing about the buys this year is that you can't stack too much from one team.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I'll be starting with James Tedesco, Brandon Smith, possibly Daniel Tupou. If I was throwing Angus Crichton in there as well, it's a lot of money on the pine for round 4. So Angus Crichton scored. He didn't score a try last season in the first 18 rounds. Luke Keary came back around 19 and he scored 5 tries in the run home and averaged 88 or something. So, it's a big case.
Oh, mate, it's a huge case, 100%. Without going over what we said the other day, I'm worried that there might be too many mouths on that left edge. But I just think Angus, he is such a tremendous player. There is always going to be opportunities there for him somewhere.
He's the one that I see because he runs just that outstanding line. I'm talking myself into him as we go. Yes, too many mouths to feed, but similar to what Andrew Davey and like a left edge or any edge back rower, to be honest, at Manly would do when Tommy Turbo's firing.
Yep.
Because he takes up so much attention out the back and people are worried about that, they just slide off the hard lead running back row just that little bit, and it opens up opportunities for him just to glide through holes. So when you've got James Tedesco going out the back, Suoliti, Tupou on the outside, maybe Joe Maru roaming around there, Luke Keary feeding it all, who invariably gets the right option every time, short ball Crichton over. So I don't know if I think the too many mouths to feed could work in his favour because of the potency. So 66 average. The 2 years prior, he averaged 75 and 76, 2021, that anomaly year, the high scoring, but
yeah, I think I'm willing to say Angus Crichton will be a 70-plus player at minimum next year.
Yeah, so to start with him, I'd probably have to cull another rooster from my team, and thinking out loud here, obviously, but it'd probably mean starting without Daniel Tupou, which I'm okay with. He's not locked into my team at this stage, but I said you can't have too many.
Yeah, for sure.